today we have Boren with us. He's our Chief Technology Officer here at Beck Technology, and he's going to preview the upcoming release of Estimator 2018 1.0. We also have Josh Cheney with us from Autodesk, and he will be on after the presentation, be on hand to answer some questions and kind of talk about our partnership with Autodesk and where BIM 360 is going to benefit both of us and you as well. So with that, Mike, I will go ahead and let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Ollie. So forewarning, some of the features I will show today will be a little bit in the weeds for those expert users. I'll try not to spend a lot of time there, but it's important because a lot of the functionality that we have put into this version, I'm going to say probably 90% of the functionality, is derived from the people that take part in our industry advisory board. And so just as a reminder for those of you who don't know Beck Technology very well, this industry advisory board is made up of people who are very passionate about solving the same problems that we are and who work with us sometimes on a day-to-day basis to make sure that our products meet the needs that are out there, that they do it right, and they're as best as they possibly can be. So some of the companies that we've been working with, specifically for this one I will mention as we go, but they're companies like Parrot Construction, Balfour Beatty, Clayco. There's a number of different companies out there who have spent a lot of time working with us to make sure that the functionality in this version works the way it should. So with that, I'm just going to, the format of this presentation is going to be to literally walk through some of the higher points of the functionality in this. I'm not going to hit every single piece of functionality. If you have questions or if you want to dive a little deeper, we've got teams of people who will be willing to sit with you and walk with you through every single piece of functionality that we've got. So feel free to reach out to us later, and we will make time for each and every one of you. So one of the things that I want to start with is, at a high level, there have been a handful of performance improvements. I'm not going to demo any of those. I just want you to know that is a constant focus of ours to make sure that we constantly improve and focus on the performance of the application. Also, one of the things that we've done is we've focused a little bit more on security and mitigating risk, and we've done that by making changes in how we lock files. And so we've been working with some clients recently on making sure that when an estimator is working with a particular file, that file is locked. And so that looks something like this when I click on a file. This particular file is already opened, and you can see here that it's in use and then who's using it. In this case, I've got it open on another machine, so it's not letting me attach to that. So what I will do is I will just open a little example file, and I'm going to use this for the bulk of the presentation today on some of the functionality. All right, the first thing that I want to walk through is some of the work that we've been doing with Balfour Beatty, specifically around how we handle bulk adding our costs. So one of the ways that Balfour and other companies like to work with their pricing is they want to, when they go and add a line item, they want to bulk add costs. And so this is what our application looks like when we are bulk adding costs. So here, if I want to, one of the things that we've added in this new 2018 1.0 version is if I select on a folder, it instantly shows me the cost items that are in the folder I've selected. And so right now I'm looking at metals, but if I go down to specialties, I can see this is everything inside of specialties, or here's everything inside of 1000, so on and so on. And then what I could do from this list is it sort of helps call out a group of items that I can then stage. And so I can add that, and then for here I can add each one of these items to my estimate and assign that to a particular location. So now all of those specialties have been added to my estimate. And it's just a nice, faster way of working with your costs and bulk adding your costs. For those of you who haven't seen Estimator before, and I probably should have done this before talking about bulk adding costs, but just so you get a quick rundown, the idea of the product is for it to be a very easy to use system. It's new, it works on concepts like drag and drop. It works with concepts like trying to anticipate what it is that you'll be working on and only show you the pieces of user interface that apply to what it thinks you're trying to do, so that you're kind of limited. You don't have 50,000 toolbars and buttons and ribbons flying all over the place. And we really focus on it trying to be as easy to use as possible. For a lot of things I'm going to show in the next couple minutes, we'll be working with a view we call the estimate view. So if you can see my cursor spinning around here, this is the estimate view, and then to the left, this is our filter view, which will filter the estimate view. All right, one of the other pieces of functionality that we've added is the ability, so let me do this real fast. I'm going to switch to a different database just to make sure that we work with the cost or the database these costs were derived from. All right, so one of the pieces that we've added is the ability to edit overline totals. And why that's important is oftentimes estimators will have to kind of wholesale change numbers based off of input from subcontractor bids or senior estimator reviews, that kind of thing. So for example, I can come in and we've got this O2 site construction section here. You can see we total that up right now. It's about 66.7, but maybe we just want to go ahead and make that an even 68. I can click the button right here in my aggregate cost summary, come over and highlight that 66.7, say, you know, we're going to make that a flat 68,000. Hit OK, and that will back into the pricing for every single item inside of that group. So, and you also, of course, we have the ability to hit undo, so I can undo and bring that back, which is always handy in case you wanted to go back and make changes. This piece of functionality highlights two different things that we've added. One, the ability to directly edit overline totals inside of your estimate view. The other, the ability to select as many items as you want, so I can select any number of items, and then hit a set escalation and actually escalate the total amount of those items directly here. So it doesn't have to be in a particular overline total group. You could do it at subgroups or at the, in this case, the entire system level. So you can handle this at any level of aggregate you'd like. So it's very flexible. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about deals a little bit more with our 2D takeoff functionality. So I'm going to switch over to our takeoff view. And from here, I'm going to load a drawing. So quantity takeoff has been very important to us, and it's been the forefront of development for the last year, and it's going to take a very big focus into 2018. So this is the first of a very large amount of features that we're going to be adding to Estimator over the next few months. All right, the first thing I wanted to show is our ability now to copy our pallet items. So in this case, I've got concrete paving at a 6-inch, 5-inch. Maybe I want to take and copy this and have an 8-inch paver. So I click our copy button, which you see me click right here, which will open this window. I can then say I want to make this concrete paving, or say 8 inches. You can color it however you'd like. And not only does it copy the basic things like its location inside of the tree, but also any other user properties you may have defined. So I can hit OK. And now we have concrete paving, 8 inches, and it knows that it's inside of O3 concrete, cast in place, and concrete paving. For those of you who've never seen this before, this is our pallet. This is our 2D takeoff pallet. This is where we organize our takeoff objects. So for those OST users out there, that would be something that you know as a condition. This particular pallet is infinitely flexible. So you can create any number of properties you want and organize this any way you'd like, and you can do it on the fly. So I've saved a couple different layouts here. In this case, they're just by takeoff level, but they could have been through concepts like uniformat and CSI, as well as phase or subcontractor, and you can instantly reorder your pallet accordingly based off of anything you've saved. All right, the next thing I wanted to show is a couple of safeguards we've added. Now, this is actually throughout the application, but it was really important in this particular location. So here I've created concrete paving, and let's say I've put a lot of work into doing some takeoff. One of the problems we've had, back over, is that sometimes an estimator might accidentally hit this remove button. And when they did that, there was no warning before to say, hey, you're about to delete this, you're sure you want to do that. So this kind of feeds back into that concept we had before about mitigating risk inside of the estimating application. That was a very big focus here. I'm only going to hit on 2 or 3 features that we actually implemented in this version for mitigating risk, but it was a constant focus, and it's something we're going to focus on moving forward as well. So now you'll see a handful of dialogues like this when doing things that won't be easily recoverable. So in this case, I'm going to say, no, I don't want to delete that. I like that concrete paving. All right, the next thing I want to do is switch this from a focus on our 2D quantity takeoff to a focus on our 3D quantity takeoff. So what I want to do now is I'm going to load a Navisworks model. And the thing I want to focus on, and it was a little subtle, and I probably could have taken a little more time. Let me show you while this is coming up. In previous versions of Estimator, you had to configure Estimator to the version of Navisworks that you used. And so we always supported the latest version of Navisworks that was available at the time of release. But if Navis was released after the fact, or if you happen to use older versions, it made it something to where we would have to come in with our implementation team and configure that. Not that we mind doing it, but it is a little extra time that you have to spend, and it's something we didn't feel like you should have to do. So now Estimator will automatically detect the version of Navisworks, even if it's a newer version, and load those models. All right, the thing that I wanted to highlight here, and this is one of those expert user pieces of functionality I mentioned earlier, is we have significantly overhauled our whitelisting functionality. For those experts out there who are on the phone who've seen this before, you notice this looks quite a bit different. This is a lot simpler than the whitelisting functionality in the past. For those of you who have no idea what whitelisting is and don't know why it's important, at a super high level, this is a thing that Estimator uses to determine what we want to bring in from the 3D models and what we do not want to bring in. And the reason why we have this functionality in the first place is to give the estimators, the people in pre-construction, a very consistent view of the 3D model. One of the problems that we identified when we were first working with Autodesk and a handful of our clients early on was that these BIM models came from a lot of different sources. They had a lot of different properties. It was really hard to figure out which one you wanted to do or to use. And to make matters worse, a lot of the properties had the exact same name. So you might have 5 different areas and you didn't know which area you needed to use for your quantity takeoff. And that's where the whitelisting is really important, is that our implementation teams will work with our clients' VDC teams and their pre-construction teams to make sure that we only bring in those properties that that company wants to use, and you can even tailor this on a designer by designer basis. So depending on who authored the model or what type of model it comes from, you can apply a completely different whitelist. Now, the things that we've done in this whitelist that are very nice, aside from very much cleaning up the user interface, is that on a property by property level, you can configure how you bring it in. And that's very important, especially for concepts like the item name for models that came from Revit, because the name for any particular item is different based off of what level it's on. And we now have the ability to be 100% completely flexible, which means kind of you have the ultimate power in being able to define what data you bring in and being able to bring in all of that data. So in this case, my item name property will bring in all values. And the way that shows up inside of our tree is we have the ability, I'm just going to clear this filter list out, and I'm going to add these components. And for those of you who are familiar with Navisworks, especially for those of you familiar with this particular model, which we've demoed many times before, you'll notice that this now looks exactly like the Navisworks model. So that's really important, because if you needed to, if you understood your model and you've worked with it in Navisworks before and you wanted to verify quantities using Navisworks, it was really difficult because the structure of that model could change depending on the author and where it came from. And now it doesn't have to. All right, now I'm going to switch over to the last and the bulk of the piece of functionality that we have created. And this is all around our integration with BIM 360. So this is by far the thing that we've spent the most time on in this version. This will mark the very first product that has ever fully integrated, or sorry, not full, best product, but the first estimating product that has ever truly fully integrated with BIM 360. So just like any other takeoff, whether it be 2D, 3D with Navis, our BIM 360 interface looks and feels the same way. You simply go to load a takeoff model, you select BIM 360. Ordinarily, you would be presented with a login if it's your very first time. So it would look somewhat like this. So in this case, I'm going to log in. Once you've done this once, we will, for as long as we can, remember this token. So you usually get a few days worth of work before it prompts you to log in again. Once you're logged in, you have to authorize your application. So I'm going to say go ahead and allow it to access the data. And then you'll be able to see your BIM 360 buckets. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate through one of our buckets and locate a model. Now, on top of the fact that I'm now integrating directly with BIM 360, I'm walking through my buckets inside of Estimator. One of the things that most of you probably know that makes this really awesome is the fact that I do not need to have any special graphics software on my computer anymore. That's kind of the magic of what Autodesk has been working on for so long, taking their applications to the cloud, is to enable you to have a completely kind of say hardware-free environment where we're not really focused on buying those really expensive machines that have all that graphics hardware to be able to work with your models. So here I'm going to open a model that was given to us by Parrot. Now, Parrot Construction is definitely one of the most passionate companies about getting this integration to work and getting it to work right. So we've been working with guys like Andy Leak over at Parrot to make sure that when this thing works, it's going to work the way it needs to. And we will continue to work with those guys moving forward. So what I'm showing now is a concept hospital that they gave us. This is Woodward Hospital. And what I'd like to show is that we are now navigating in a fully embedded LMV inside of Estimator. Now, this isn't just viewing a window inside of Estimator and then any data that we get, we then will copy and paste or kind of drag and drop and bring over and it's dumb data. This is a tightly integrated model. So our application knows about this model. It's not just loading the model, it's actually loading the data behind the model into the estimate itself. And the model will know about this application. Moving forward, we're going to continue to tighten this integration. So there will be a lot of really exciting things that will come in the future. But what I want to point out now is that we are now working directly with a BIM 360 model inside of Estimator. So we have the ability to browse and open models in BIM 360. We also have the ability to view and interact and filter those models directly inside of Estimator. So what that can look like is I've created this group here. I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So one way that you can look at your model is by level, right? So I'm breaking this down by item name. You'll notice this is highlighting. One of the things I can do is edit some settings maybe to make this a little bit easier to see online. So I'm going to turn off the ghosting of hidden objects so it just shows the objects I've selected. And for those of you who've never seen Estimator before, you get a feel for how the filter view works. So it's filtering the model. It's also filtering the estimate in real time as well, although I haven't currently applied any cost to this model. But you kind of get an idea for how this works. So I can look at it by level and break it down by type. I can come into here and I can flip this and say, first break it down by type, and then we'll look at it by level. So in this case, I say, show me all the columns, right? And I could break that down by level if I'd like. One of the other cool things that we've done, both for Navisworks and for BIM 360, is implemented the ability to select an object, right-click, and say, select everything similar to this object. So this is the type of functionality that's often been requested by a lot of the forward-thinking companies who are already embracing 3D quantity takeoff that makes your life a heck of a lot easier, is you find an object in the model, and you can say, hey, give me everything like this. Now that I've selected my columns, I'm just going to go through and add some costing to these columns. So here, I'm going to say I'm going to add a cost. I'm going to say, let's go ahead and find columns. See, that's quite a bit. Let's do this. I'm going to go to something a little bit more simplified for this. All right. There we go. And I'm going to tie a 24 by 24 inch column line item to these columns. And just like we've seen before, if you're an existing user of our products, that's all done through drag and drop. So here, this particular line item is measured in vertical linear feet. I'm just going to grab the total length of column that I've selected above into my quantity field and hit OK. So I've now mapped that line item to all of these columns, which will mean that if at any time these columns grow, shrink, or disappear, that quantity will update. And I'll go into exactly how that looks and feels here in a second. Maybe I'll go ahead as well and put some cost on our floors. So I'm going to select a filter for floors, select our ground slab. Maybe we'll put a slab on grade assembly here. And we'll map the area, and then of course you're not just limited to one property, you can map as many as you want. So I'll map that and answer a handful of questions while I'm here about the type of concrete we're going to use, so 4,000 PSI concrete. It wants the thickness of the slab in inches, but this guy's measured in feet, so we'll go ahead and change it to inches here so that everything lines up. So now we've got a mapping that uses the right unit. We're going to make this pump concrete. Everything you're seeing here is 100% customizable. So this is just an example of walking through an assembly inside of our application. But these questions, how it looks and feels, and the interaction is all 100% customizable. And this is something that the guys in our implementation team can help work with you to create. All right, I'm happy with that. So now I've priced my ground slab. Here what I want to do is come back. I'm going to select this slab, say get everything similar. Noticing that it picked that ground slab too, I'm going to go ahead and just unselect that piece. And let's throw in an elevated deck assembly for these remaining slabs here. All right, let's price that by area. I'm not going to mess with the rest of the stuff. A lot of these questions are asking about additional structure like beams and columns, but we've already priced our columns separately, so I'm going to leave that unpriced in this assembly. And then maybe lastly, we'll look at some walls. So I'm going to pick the wall, get everything similar. I could just hit Control-A and select everything visible. But in this case, I only wanted to get everything similar to this particular wall. All right, so this is a metal panel. And we'll just associate a metal panel item with that. This guy's measured in square feet, so we'll do it by the area. And that should be enough to kind of get the idea for how it looks to apply cost and interacting with the model. Now, there's a couple of things we can do here. We can do things like deconstruct the model by only looking at what's mapped. So we do have a property called isMapped. I can bring this up. Say, hey, everything that's mapped to a cost, show me that. Okay, this is everything in the model currently mapped to a cost. Everything that's not mapped, show me that. And so now, if I were just to leave this selected and to continue to select items, find all similar, come through and say, okay, I'm going to add a line item. This is going to be maybe a precast, basic wall, something like that. Tie that to cost. We'll do that to square feet as well. As soon as I add this, you're going to notice they go away. They disappear. And so you can actually deconstruct a model by adding cost to it until there's nothing left as kind of a nice, handy way of figuring out what you have and you haven't taken off yet. All right. All right, so the last major piece that I wanted to show you guys that we have implemented as well is the ability to compare models inside of BIM 360. Now, for some of you who are savvy BIM 360 users, you say, well, hey, I've already seen the ability to compare models in BIM 360. But this is not quite the same, although we have taken a significant amount of steps to make it look the same. There is no way inside of BIM 360 to get at any of that information for comparison. And as a matter of fact, the information that you would need isn't really available anyway when working through comparisons like that. So we have re-implemented that comparison directly inside of our application, but maintain a focus on keeping that look and feel as best as possible. So if I wanted to update this, the way that I would do that, I come into here to my update window. Here it allows me to compare as many different models as I'd like against my current baseline. So I'm going to say compare against. It would bring up your BIM 360 buckets. You'd navigate through, find the one you want to update. In this case, it'd be this version 2 here, and you'd select it. Now, that takes about 90 seconds for this particular model because it loads up both versions and then does a full comparison. In an effort to save time, I've already pulled it up here. So this is what would happen 90 seconds later. Just like in our other applications, so just like in our implementation for Navisworks, when you have that comparison between two models, we show you what's been added, modified, and removed. And just like with Navisworks, it is also fully integrated with our filter view, so that as you filter, this will also change. So this to the right being, you know, hey, the number of objects that are added, modified, or removed for what you've got selected and visible currently. We've also added a handful of other nifty features. Probably the most importantly, the ability to see the affected costs. So I'm going to just bring this up for a second. You can see here's the items that I priced, and then you can even see the variance, so anything that was affected by the update. In this case, there wasn't a whole lot of effect on that update, but we did have some columns that looked like they were affected quite a bit. Outside of that, the floors look like they may have grown just a hair, so we've got an additional concrete and labor that will go into handling that. One of the other things that we've done inside of this comparison, of course, you know, being able to turn off anything that's been added, modified, or removed and really focus on any particular piece is there. We've also given you the ability, irrespective of what's been added, modified, or removed, you have the ability as well to show only those objects that have been changed that I applied costing to. So here, if I click this little button off to the side, that enables us to see only those objects that will affect our estimate that were involved in this modification. Now, not everything that you see here had a price that was affected. So most of this, as you can see from this count object over here to the right, are things like property changes. In this case, the Revit file may have been moved a couple times, and there was some paths that were stored with these objects, and those paths are different. So we don't really care about that. I'm going to turn that off. And that'll really filter down now to objects that were either transformed, which means they moved from one place to the other, or they actually changed in shape. So this is something where they were modified in size. So here I can come in and say, well, outside of transform, let's just focus on the stuff that's modified in size. And I can select on any one of these objects and see exactly what was modified. So I can have a very thorough presentation of what's changed. I can filter down to exactly only those types of changes that I care about. Just like in the comparisons that you've seen inside of A360, you can look at that as a flat list, you can look at that as a tree. So a lot of that's compliments to our friends at Autodesk for working so closely with our development teams. And this enables you to, before the estimate is affected, just like in our Navisworks implementation, you can figure out, am I okay with that update, or do I want to keep it the way it was? And that's all handled here. So you can either update the price, unhook it, or completely throw it out. And this is one of the things that we really want to keep a focus on inside of Estimator, is giving the estimator the ability to have comfort for what is being impacted when a new drawing set's been delivered, when a new model's been delivered. They can look through these changes, they can figure out what's been added, modified, or removed. They can see the impact on their estimate, and before it impacts their estimate, they can choose what they want to do about it. Once you get this the way you like it, whether you want to unhook some of these or remove them completely or just keep them to where they're going to update, the estimator simply has to hit accept update, and as soon as they hit accept update, this model that was the new model now becomes the current model and the estimate is now associated with this model specifically, and it will be driving quantities until there's some new update and we can bring it into the update mechanism. Now, I've skipped over a substantial amount of smaller pieces of functionality. So one of the things that's happened since we started this cast is I actually got logged out and I had to log back in, but I wasn't logged in under this guy. So BIM 360's give me permissions issue. But that would just require me to log back in inside of my Takeoff window. Now, I've skipped over a lot of this functionality, but there is a whole lot here, and I would love to spend some time with the people on the phone and the people who couldn't make it today, walking through some of the details of what I didn't show but I may have mentioned. But in an effort to keep this as close as possible to our time limit. It looks like we're already getting a little bit over. I'd like to try to end it here and open it up to questions if you guys have any. And leading into that, one of the things that I'd like to do is just acknowledge Josh. Josh is from Autodesk. He has been working with Beck Technology on a number of different levels, just like their development teams have been working with us to help get this product to market and to make sure that it works the way it needs to with their applications and their technologies. Josh, would you like to say anything while we have you here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mike. Hello to everyone on the webinar. Just a couple things to highlight here. So Beck Technology is a long-term partner of Autodesk, and bringing that together with really listening to their customers, I think you're seeing the culmination of that effort here within Destiny. What a fantastic product. This is a full-blown solution, and really thinking back to my days when I was working in pre-con and business development, this is really a must-have for anyone in pre-con or estimating. It's a tight-knit integration. Beck Technology has done a great job of leveraging our APIs that exist in Forge. And as you can see, it's a direct connection to our large model viewer. There's no need for exporting to a CSV or anything like that. And really, you're operating in the continuation of a common data environment. So great work. Hats off to Michael and his team. And really think that these are some exciting features.
Great. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Mike. We do have a few questions. Please feel free to continue typing them in as they come. We have one that I believe was covered in the BIM 360 piece, Mike, but I just want to make sure that it was. So the question was over flagging model updates, and I know you just went through that with the BIM 360 and the red and green and unhooking or choosing not to. Is that the same as in the 2D takeoff still as well?
So 2D takeoff for our existing platform?
Yes, for the updates. Just want to make sure it's the same in 3D and 2D, how they would see those changes flagged.
I see. So the 2D does work a little bit differently. We didn't make any changes to our 2D updates in this one. Currently, our 2D updates is a slip sheet type functionality where you can select the drawings that you want to update, and then it will basically slip in the new sheet underneath that. Now, I guess, spoiler alert a little bit, we will be creating some cool update functionality in and around 2D in our implementation, and in our talks with Autodesk, I know that they are very passionate as well about supporting 2D comparison directly inside of their BIM 360. We've seen, for those of you who played with this tech before, you've seen that kind of comparison show up inside of BIM 360. We have every intention to use that as well. So I am really excited about how that's going to look and feel. I would say that for those BIM 360 users out there, you can expect to have a very similar, if not fully integrated 2D, 3D experience very shortly.
Okay, great. And then as far as undocking windows within Estimator, can you just touch on that? I know we've talked about it in past webinars, but just the ability to do that and how the power is behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm working, everything you're seeing today is from a little 15-inch laptop, so obviously the real estate's a bit small, but when I go back to my desk, I've got a handful of monitors. Every window can be torn off and placed on different monitors with an unlimited number that as long as your video card can support it, so can we. That's done pretty easily. So for example, if I wanted to grab this estimate view and tear that off, I could. Now it's just sort of floating in space. You'll notice that when I tear those views off, the ribbon goes with it, so that if you've got it on a different monitor, all the controls you need will be right there. If I wanted to dock that so I can see both my estimate and my model at the same time, I just simply drag and drop it below, like so.
Okay. And then one last question, and I think we'll wrap it up after this. In 3D Takeoff, are modifications tracked via GUI?
GUID?
Yes.
Yeah, so the global unique identifier
Okay.
is what he's asking. So yeah, there is actually a handful of different IDs that are used, but the one thing that I really love is that now that Autodesk has created this platform on BIM 360 and everything is moving towards their cloud, they're also standardizing the data So it makes it a heck of a lot easier and better when working with 3D models to ensure that you've got something that you can actually compare against. So they go through a pretty rigorous effort of having globally unique identifiers for each of their components. We do use specific identifiers. They are, from the software side of things, they are GUIDs traditionally, so they are in that format, but there are a few of them that we look at. If it's the stump the chump kind of question, so one of the things that we do run into often is that those database IDs and GUIDs can actually split. So if you have a model that goes and one object turns into two, so if I drew, let's say on a slab, I created a split between those things to represent different pours. We actually do go through a significant amount of effort to make sure that we track that so that when you have the updated model, you can see that, hey, this is the same object, although it has been split into two different objects, but we will represent that and show you that that is what has happened.
Okay, sounds great. Well, as far as today's webinar, I think that's all for the questions and the time we have, but I want to thank Mike and Josh for being here and answering these questions and showing us the upcoming release. This was recorded, so we will be sending it out hopefully later today, and it will be on our website as well for you to share with your team. As always, please feel free to reach out with the email if you do have questions or want to see some more details like Mike offered, and we will see you all at our next webinar. Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Holly.
Thanks, guys.